comes to aging, it's not how old you are, but how you are old that matters. So how do you keep living life your way when it makes sense to access services that can make a difference? Brought to you by Uniting AgeWell, the Aging Ideal aims to start conversations to cut through the noise and provide people with a greater understanding of this important chapter of life.
I think some of the misconceptions are that, you're too old, either that you won't adapt to it so you can't adapt, and or that you just shouldn't do it because you shouldn't exert yourself or you might hurt yourself. And some of those risks are reasonable, but they're easily dealt with. And there's certainly lots and lots of evidence that exercise, will help with most chronic diseases, and in some cases do better than medications.
This is the final episode in the first series of The Aging Ideal, where we've explored some of the myths and challenges that surround aging. In this episode, we talk about health and fitness, being strong at any age. Like much of what we've discussed in this season, the idea that once you get to a certain age, the benefits of health, exercise and general wellness drop away is a mindset that we need to change. I wanted to know from the experts about the importance of keeping up an exercise regime and whether there are any limits to what we can do to keep our mind and body strong. And I had the privilege of chatting to a group of active men and women who know firsthand the benefits of exercise and having support on all aspects of their physical health. Professor Alan Hayes is Assistant Dean, Western Centre for Health Research and Education at Victoria University and Deputy Director of the Australian Institute of Musculoskeletal Sciences. He's made a number of important contributions to the application of exercise and dietary supplements in muscle disease and dysfunction. Professor Hayes, would you agree that perhaps we've shifted the way we think about older people and exercise and that we can improve our quality of life by being proactive? How important is exercise once we reach a certain age?
It's vital and essential. And we're sort of now halfway through the WHO Decade of Healthy Aging, and that's exactly what the movement has really been about. It's no longer about just, can we make you live longer? It's about living healthier. Because living an additional 10, 20 years with a whole lot of diseases and not feeling well and so is not a particularly pleasant way to live. What we're interested in is we want you to live those 20 years, but we want you to live those 20 years vibrant, being able to do the things that you want to do, and exercise is the cornerstone of that. So you need to have sufficient amount of muscle to be able to do the activities that you want to do. So it's now become essential.
What are some of the misconceptions about exercising over 60?
I think some of the misconceptions are that, you're too old, either that you won't adapt to it so you can't adapt, and or that you just shouldn't do it because you shouldn't exert yourself or you might hurt yourself. And some of those risks are reasonable, but they're easily dealt with. And there's certainly lots and lots of evidence that exercise, will help with most chronic diseases, and in some cases do better than medications. I think that's probably the reason that a lot of time people don't do it, is because they think, well, look, maybe it just won't necessarily improve the situation. But people have shown, since the 1990s, that even in the most elderly and frail, your muscles will still respond to exercise. So one study with people had doing leg extension exercises, and they were able to increase threefold. These were, living in aged care facilities. They were in their 90s. They still increased their muscle strength, and that meant that they could now get out of a chair. So before it, they couldn't. Now they could. And those are the sorts of benefits and the things that I think people don't realise. They look at fit, young, healthy people and go, I'm never going to be like that. And the reality is then you're not going to get back to that point. But the difference between saying, well, I've been sitting in this chair for 5 hours because I can't get out of it until, my carer comes or some family members come, as opposed to I can get out of my chair, which means I can obviously reach the toilet and go and make myself a cup of tea. You just get that level of and maintain that level of independence. So I think part of it is the goals that people have shift as they get over 60. But absolutely, they should exercise and they should never be told they can't.
And part of that shift, I suppose, we've really focused health and fitness on younger people. Gyms are set up for for younger bodies in all sorts of ways. But we're also seeing more of the over 50s gym and an increase in wraparound services for older people. What are the differences, and should we adopt a different approach to health and fitness at a certain age?
The approach to the exercise part of it probably doesn't necessarily change. The same exercise prescription, rules and approaches still the same, in that you start with what you're capable of doing to begin with. You gradually increase it as you get to points where what you are doing is not making you as breathless as it was before, or you're not feeling that it's as hard as anymore. You progress it, so you continually improve. I don't think those aspects necessarily have changed. What changes as you get over 50 compared to the younger people in the gyms, you're more likely to have other conditions, maybe on medications. So there are sort of things that you need to be careful with. And so you really need to have it a little bit more controlled and supported, at least initially, by clinical exercise physiologists or physiotherapists or other allied health with that level of expertise to ensure that you're doing things the right way, to ensure you're doing good, proper lifting techniques.
It seems that exercise becomes even more important in our 60s through to any age. And there is a misconception that we need to slow down. It's all about tailoring the approach to exercise for each individual.
But from an exercise perspective, the encouragement is still aerobic exercise pretty much every day, or at least 5 days a week, resistance exercise 3 times a week. So you work it on one day, give it a bit of a rest for the next day, and then go back. And we, would incorporate balance activities virtually every day. So the frequency with which you exercise and what you're doing is relative exercise. So we're not expecting you to say, well, okay, when you were young, you're going to do 60 kilogram, leg extension. Now you're, 70, we expect you to do the same thing. What we expect you to do is say, what is your maximum? And we'll work at a relative percentage of that maximum. But the key is always trying to build it up. Once it becomes easy, then you're not getting the benefits anymore.
Fractures can be such a crucial determinant for progressive ill health. Is that right?
Absolutely. So the worst types of fractures are hip fractures. I can't remember the exact current figures and stuff, but in many cases the average, particularly if you're over 80, the median lifespan is about 10 months. After having a fracture, even your first fracture. Certainly disability and years lost to that skyrockets after that, because you just don't ever get back to the same level of health, and then you really get very inactive. And as soon as you're very inactive, everything just goes downhill from there.
Why are we lacking resources to support people over 60, do you think, for the sorts of preventative post-fracture that we should be doing?
I think partly there's probably not a registry of sufferers. There's for diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular, all these other diseases. There are sort of organisations, and there are some, and it's growing now, about fracture registries. So people have fractured can get on the registry where they could to gain advice and those sorts of things. But there just hasn't been that level of support. And most people go back to their GPs. Once you leave the hospitals, the hospitals have done their job. They go back to their GPs, and the GPs aren't necessarily equipped really to provide the level of information. The GPs certainly can say, look, you should exercise more, you should eat better, but what does that actually mean for the average person?
And where's the support to actually implement that in a life that's, possibly been a long one that's had particular habits?
Yeah, absolutely. And people then get, particularly who have fractured, they often will then get scared of moving. Falls are the most common reason you fracture, so they'll get scared of moving, so they then move less. And, yes, they might think, good, I'm protecting myself, but the more you sit down, the more you're just inactive, the worse actually you're making everything. So you actually make yourself more likely to potentially fall and fracture later.
So the work that you do, does that help mitigate against some of the really severe outcomes of fracture?
Yes, so that being able to get people into the gym, you can get, through an exercise physiologist, similar to other allied health professionals, and you can get 5 free Medicare sessions with an exercise physiologist. So we have them come in and they work one-on-one with our exercise physiologist to help do strengthening exercises, but importantly also balance exercises. And we sort of deal with a lot of balance exercises. One of the major issues is fracture prevention has really moved away from bones and actually far more now in muscles, because it's all about not falling over. So the most common reason that people with osteoporosis, other things, the reason they fracture is because they fall over. So if you can prevent them from falling over, you're more likely to prevent fractures.
So the benefits are enormous. Everything that you've said, I'm going to the gym after this, after speaking to you today. How do we change mindset? because I think, there's legitimate issues that people come to that space with as they get older. As you mentioned before, there's medication, there's physical impairments of all sorts. How do we change that thinking for people who are anxious about it?
It's really about trying to get people to recognise that exercise is medicine. There'd be no pill that would be more taken by people if you could put exercise into a pill. Unfortunately, you can't, and it doesn't work that way. But for people to realise that this is your medicine, and people will take their medication, and they're happy to take their medication. So why wouldn't you take this medication that has far fewer side effects, will work with virtually every chronic disease, helps with brain health, gut health, cardiovascular health. Muscles are very much one of the keys to health, and it's just underappreciated. So your skeletal muscles are the key to weight management because it's one of the major organs for glucose disposal, so it'll help to prevent diabetes, maintain good weight, help to offset cardiovascular disease. Exercise is shown to improve and help to either delay or prevent dementia. So there are so many benefits to exercise that you just don't and wouldn't be able to get from taking, all these medications. And so it's really about, I guess, shifting people's mindset to not sort of the exercise isn't an add-on, it's something that you should theoretically be doing every single day, like you would take your diabetes medication, take your exercise. And if you actually do your exercise, you could probably end up stopping your diabetes medication.
Well, that's another question I want to ask you because it's a real paradigm shift. I sort of, in my head, thought, I reached my peak at a certain point, and now I can take it a bit easier. What sort of outcomes do you see for the people who took exercise considerably seriously all their lives, who did that 5 days, 3 days, making sure that their muscles were still being challenged, that they were doing cardiovascular work? How do you see them when they come into your clinic, for example?
Well, certainly for those people, we rarely actually see them in our clinic because they're fit and healthy and they rarely will fracture and they're not likely to fall. And so we tend to see the people who are more frail in our clinic. And so we actually don't necessarily see those people very often.
Everything you are saying is resonating so deeply. Coming back from chronic illness myself and finding my body again, it was such slow steps. But then eventually you find yourself somewhere walking around the block. And that is a great incentive. Once you can get over that small, possibly disappointment of your physical capacity at the start, it's really true how much that kind of feeds into maintaining your exercise.
Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to also ask you, I guess less from preventative and more from restorative perspective. How can you safely exercise if, for example, you have osteoporosis or you've got arthritis already? What can be done to slow the progress of that disease and, again, with confidence?
So resistance exercise, absolutely, to build up that strength and build up the pull that's actually going on the bones will help you to offset that decline in bone loss. For arthritis, that's a little bit different, particularly looking at things like osteoarthritis. High impact then is likely to be painful and might cause more damage to the joints. So there, actually, you want to do more low impact activities to not stress the joints. But it's important to do, again, resistance training to a point will again strengthen up muscles around the joints, which will support it. But also, their low impact aerobic type training to help keep joints mobile, help keep your muscles and tendons mobile and loose and stuff, so that you can ideally try to lower your weight, because a lot of it, particularly osteoarthritis, obesity is the number one general cause of osteoarthritis. And because of that, you're carrying a higher weight, then there's more stress on your joints. So doing exercise to help you with weight management and trying to get your weight down is obviously one of the best things you can do.
As a professor, can I say you're one of the professors that's made more sense to me than any of the others I've ever spoken to?
Oh, thank you.
And that's part of, I guess, what's really interesting about this is it is so proven, it's so important, but how do we embed this in our lives later in life? And how much support do we need to do that? How do people actually go about starting an exercise regime? They might not have been doing anything for 20 years, and we're considering safety and all the aspects that you've described. What's everyone's best course of action?
I think given, and particularly that age group, their GPs are often their first port of call. And again, GPs are really great if you do have a regular GP, because they do know you and they know what you've been through for a long period of your life. So they very much have a vested interest in what you're doing. But they themselves aren't necessarily going to be able to tell you what to do. But they could obviously refer you on to a clinical exercise physiologist to get an assessment.
Well, we've heard from the experts, but what do older people say about the impact exercise and proactive healthcare has had on their well-being? I was delighted to catch up with a group of people at Uniting AgeWell's community hub in Burwood. The hub has a wellness centre complete with an AgeWell gym specifically designed for seniors. They have a lot to say about how they tackle staying active and the benefits of participating in a holistic regime to keep strong. Here's what they had to say. Firstly, I'd like you to think back to your own parents. Did you think of them as actually being fit and healthy? Did they exercise? Or what was your impression of their overall well-being as they aged? So you might think about it differently in that, was their exercise incorporated into their life? Or did they actually make a commitment to go walking, go running, do whatever? Has anyone got a reflection on that from their life? Raj?
My mother was active right to the end, although she had problems. My father was a minister at 75. He gave away his entire library, stopped driving, and in a few years, he was gone. So I determined I will never retire. I will retire, put on new tires.
Has anyone else got experience with parents and the way you've thought about them in your experience watching? Were they healthy? Were they exercising?
My mother was great. She was still playing golf the day before she had a stroke at 84. And she played cards with friends and she was in the church group and she was always... I had to ring up and make an appointment. She was always so busy. So I think that's a really good way to live. Like, you have to keep every day something.
And a wonderful example for her children coming through as well, thinking about themselves as being active people. What do you think some of the misconceptions or myths are about exercising later in life? Ray?
As a family, we've always naturally exercised in that we've been farmers. So you get out and you still help with the animals and you still work in the garden or naturally take yourself off for a walk. My grandmother lived to 102 and every day she would walk across the road and around the neighbours, and she kept active without having to go at 6 o'clock or 10 o'clock, or because that annoys me as getting older, sometimes having to go around the clock.
It's a really interesting point you make, because exercise was far more integrated into our lives many decades ago. We just did it as part of our daily work. So for you now getting older and having to schedule this into your life, has that been a bit of a transition?
Yes, it has. I still like to walk unless... I'm not very good at saying, right, I'll get up and go for a walk. I need somebody or take the dog or something like that. I do come to classes here, but being governed by the clock annoys me at this stage.
Yes, who cares about the clock right now, you know? Why do we have to go anywhere at 10 a.m? I agree. I'm with you on that. I wish I didn't have to get out of bed today. I was very tired. Brian?
I used to have a dog and I used to walk the dog twice a day, so... I'd still like to get another dog down the track because I know that puts you into a routine which is really healthy.
That's actually really interesting that you both feel like that too, that impetus, that thing outside of you that motivates you to get out and do the exercise that you need, like a class or a dog. I'd actually be really interested to know if anyone has been exercising all their life. So it's just been absolutely part of what you've done forever. Peter?
I've always played sport and I'm still playing basketball now.
Are you?
Friday mornings, and I'm one of the youngest there. In our little group, there's 3 or 4 over 80 and 1 is over 90. So it's not brilliant basketball, it's not NBA stuff, but we're on the court and we're moving around. It's only half court. We can't run the distance, the length, but it's good. People are moving.
Tell me, I still play netball, just by the way, but that's got so many benefits, doesn't it? You're catching up with people every week. You're working in a team. We sort of have stopped doing that when we get older in some way, don't we?
Yes, but it's important to have something like that so you actually get out and go and do it, I also go to a gym. I walk to, it's about 15 minutes walk, but I walked a long way, so I'm warmed up. But I'm not trying to be Mr. America, building muscles. I'm just trying to keep what I've got. That's it.
Yeah. And do you think that the fact that you've exercised all the way through your life has made a difference to you now?
Probably, and it's always a help. I know with footy injuries and that sort of thing, you always grit it and put up with it. The same with doing repetitions at a gym. I do 15 of all of them, and probably the first 10 of them are the easy bits, and the extra 5 are up here in the head.
It's very true. I think that mental aspect is a really important one. You're nodding over there about that, how much feeling confident or feeling positive about exercising really affects whether you're going to do it or not. Hi.
I'm not really a person for exercising. I'm a total non-sportler. I haven't been able to exercise as a child from a heart problem all my life, but I never stopped doing things. I can't sit long. And my mother was the same. She went until 86, my grandmother 98, and I've walked around, done the family work. I can't stop. I don't do exercises other than what I do here, which is very helpful, but I can't do longer than 3/4 of an hour, half an hour, with breaks in between.
I think it's also interesting to sort of reframe, okay, so if I'm not doing exercise as such, then I'll walk somewhere or I'll integrate it again into my day.
Do the housework, do the garden. I don't walk long because I can't. However, if I don't stop going around the house 1,001 times, I think that does me the case.
I think so. Look, but I'm not an exercise professional, so don't take my advice that's enough. I might have to check on the doctors about that. Do you feel like, the way that, say, gyms or the way that exercise is presented, that it's been very much targeted to young people and it takes a bit of a rethink to feel like exercise can be part of your life the whole way through? What do you think, Anne?
Being a violinist, I need to be able to relax my muscles, and my posture is so important. And it's really helped been doing yoga, Pilates and Tai Chi. 3 times a week I'm doing the exercises.
And is this something new in your life? As you've gotten older, you've thought, okay, this body needs to keep moving.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, it really gets me going now, and I'm very relaxed now, stretching the muscles, and it's so helpful.
That's actually, it's a huge part of this, isn't it? The mental health aspect of exercise. But relaxation isn't one we often talk about. We often talk about that wonderful feeling that you get, you're moving your energy through. But it is that as well. It's actually able to find like a peace in the body.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, it's a wonderful feeling after doing yoga. Just so relaxed and floating on a cloud after I've done it.
That's beautiful. And so this is a new thing in your life that has become a really important part of you continuing the life that you want to live, playing violin, etc. Do you think that we've changed the way we think, about, as I was sort of saying before, as you get older, it used to be like, oh, do I have to? Like now it's sort of much more, do you think that there's an expectation that we must keep exercising?
There possibly is an expectation, yes, which sadly for quite a large number of people, older people, give up on it. Say, I can't do that. And they don't try. And I think that's their loss. I was very fortunate. I have a large family, and most of my exercising was done in 6 children, and all the work that was entailed with them, and I was involved with volunteering, stuff like that. But I have been attending Uniting AgeWell exercises since May 2016. So I can certainly vouch for the value that it gave me. I do have an impediment that I was born with, which caused me numerous visits to hospitals and things like that. And it's still a pest, but that's all. And it hasn't stopped me doing things, and it was never going to kill me. So why not do things and be involved with other people, and young people makes a big difference.
That's true. Raj is nodding in enthusiasm because exercise, as you were mentioning, Peter, it's getting out, it's playing basketball with friends, it's meeting up, it's coming into a centre where you're meeting a whole different range of people. Is that part of it for you too, Raj?
Being connected to people, very important. And being connected to young people. There's a story of a aged care centre in Sri Lanka where they thought the people would soon pass away. And then they brought in a child centre next door. And the people started living. So connecting to young people and having a sense of hope, a sense of joy, that makes a difference.
I'm interested to know as well, we spoke to Professor Alan Hayes talking about the importance of exercise and physical health. Now there's so much more talk rather than how long we live. It's about how well we live for that time. Have you started to think more about how you're going to have a quality of life as you age? What do you think, Peter? I mean, it sounds unreal that you've got this group of men that get together and play basketball. How do we motivate people as they age, do you think, to stay connected? Do the exercises or the classes or the groups to keep connected and active?
This group has been together for years. The club is called the Myths and Legends, and some of them have played international basketball, and the club has been going for years and years, and they just don't like to go away. There's one thing we do on the court. There's older players and younger players, so the younger players are not to challenge the older players, because if they find it too difficult, they won't come. So that's a bit of an unwritten rule that we do. We look after the older ones.
So it's this sense of inclusion. It's making sure that people are feeling that they belong somewhere as much as anything.
Well, it is. And the group, there's one guy, he's over 90, and the youngest one of our group would probably be a bit over 70. So, but it's important that they keep coming and that we look after each other so that we do keep coming.
These days, aged care services offer a lot more than just home care or residential care. The focus is being proactive so people can maintain their independence and community connection. To be fit and healthy through exercise, therapy and a range of activities that really do benefit people of all ages. Joining our discussion is physiotherapist Alice Small and operations manager Allied Health Callum Dippier-Domenico from Uniting AgeWell. We start with Callum. What role do you think service providers play in encouraging a proactive approach to restoring health and fitness?
I think the most important thing that service providers can do is making sure that you are individualising the program to the person that's standing in front of you. I think what we try and do is spend a lot of time talking through people's goals and really why they have come to us. And I think particularly what has been important in the past is really trying to understand how coming to our service might influence and change their life. So, examples in the past of some people who have come in and said, I play golf every week and I have done for the last 15 years and I'm really struggling to do that. And I'm starting to think, can I do it? Should I do it? And they're missing that connection they have with their friends that they might have had for a long time. So it allows us to kind of go, all right, well, this is where we want to get to. What do we need to do in order to get there? And I think the benefit of that as well is that not only our allied health team, our physios, our exercise physiologists have that to focus on, but it also helps to motivate that team between the client and the allied health professional to try and get them to where they need to be. Because I think overall, the independence and autonomy that comes from working towards something that's going to benefit them in their overall life is really important. And we certainly find that having that, as we've talked about here, that focus on not just the physical health improvement that comes, but the quality of life, the improvement in their psychological health or their mental health that comes with being able to build their confidence to do something that they've wanted to do or wanted to continue doing.
And that individuation of this support is obviously crucial to making sure that that person is actually expressing themselves in the work that they do, or finding themselves, or finding something new about themselves. What about people that haven't exercised before, who are starting from scratch? How tricky can that be?
Yeah, it's really difficult. I think I've been an exercise physiologist for over 10 years and even when I walk into a gym, it's overwhelming sometimes. So I think it's about trying to ensure, and I think we do a good job of this, that people are maybe not in their most comfortable environment and trying to make them feel comfortable and to build their confidence in that. Again, going into those environments, we find that we can have the greatest benefit by making them feel comfortable and building their confidence. And really a lot of what we're doing is trying to set them up so that they are able to achieve their goals in that controlled environment and then take it out into their own lives and have that benefit them there.
Do you think GPs are doing enough to encourage, you to treat injuries or deterioration in physicality as they did when you were younger? Encourage exercise, or do they tend to talk about age and inevitability?
It's changing slowly, but I think there's still plenty of work to do there, particularly in regards to the exercise space.
It doesn't take much to frighten us, especially as we get older and feeling vulnerable, to not want to try. And so obviously that's a big part of this transformation, is ensuring that we're not giving those wrong messages about what our capacities can be as well. This is a question for the rest of my friends down the back here. Alice. Hi, Alice. How can you safely and confidently exercise if, for example, osteoporosis or you've got arthritis already?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's really understandable to think that if you have conditions like osteoporosis or osteoarthritis, that exercise will cause further damage or perhaps impact our joints further and make you feel worse. However, what we know, and the research is really quite robust on this now, is exercise is safe and effective, and one of the most important strategies for managing these conditions. I guess if you're not feeling confident as well, it's, as Callum has said, it's really important to seek out advice and get that sort of tailored approach to manage your condition as best as possible. And that involves, obviously the exercise component and also the education around managing these conditions. So a couple of key things with osteoporosis and osteoarthritis is building in strength exercise, weight-bearing exercise, as well as balance exercises. And those things, require a bit of teaching and trial and error and perfecting. But once you start to develop a program that's suited to you, you can really reap the benefits. And, as we've been talking about, it's not just about that physical improvement, it's that social connection and mental health improvements as well.
But it's a huge thing to challenge conceptions about what your capacity is. Is it a big change that you see in people when they face some of their fears around exercise or their bodies?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just giving people time to go through those fears and help to talk through it and just understand, what is going on in these conditions. Often we know GPs don't have a lot of time to do this with you, and that's where allied health professionals such as physiotherapists and exercise physiologists are a great resource in breaking down those barriers and then again working out what you can do that meets your capacity right now, and then work towards building on that and developing more goals once, you're starting to feel better and wanting to do more.
There is no doubt exercise is easier for people who have done it their whole life. Professor Hayes mentioned that they simply don't get many people visit their clinics who have exercised their whole life, but it's never too late to start. There's a lesson for all of us about the benefits of exercise to stay strong at any age. I asked Helen what she would have told her younger self.
I used to play sports when I was younger, and then you have a family and you do other things, and then you get older and you're looking after a husband, which I have done in the last 10 years. You lose all that. We used to walk. That was our main exercise. So it's only in the last year when I realised my health wasn't what it should be that I decided to start with the gym for balance and strength, that I needed those two things. I tell you, after the first lesson, I could barely walk. And I'm pleased to say now it doesn't worry me, and it's only been 4 weeks or 5 weeks, so you can make great strides.
I told the physios when I came here, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. And they said, yeah, well, do a bit, then you rest, do a bit more, and rest. So it's not strenuous, it's not stretching you too far.
Tell me about your confidence then. Has your confidence grown doing it that way?
Yes, a lot. Yeah, I feel a lot more confident that I can keep going with the physio and get good benefit out of it.
You noticing a big difference?
Yes. I build up my knees and muscles around the knees significantly. So it's strengthened my legs a lot. Yep.
It's amazing too, isn't it? Just repetition or doing things for even a short amount of time can make such a massive difference to our quality of life. What a wonderful morning I've had. I'm glad I got out of bed. It was hard, I got to tell you, today. It's been so wonderful. Thank you so much for how open and generous you are with your experience and your insights, because that'll be fantastic for people to hear the difference that this has made in your life in a real way. You know, the challenges that you face, but the ways that you have found the support to move in a future direction. So it's wonderful, and thank you to our collaborators in health. Thank you very much for joining us today. Wonderful. And thank you for listening to The Aging Ideal. We hope you've enjoyed the stories, perspectives, and expert advice on the experiences of aging. I look forward to continuing this important conversation in Season 2. You've been listening to The Aging Ideal, a podcast for Uniting AgeWell, produced by SoundCartel. Subscribe free wherever you listen to podcasts. For a list of really helpful services available to the community, you can head to the show notes of this episode.